when the stars began to fall. For nearly 10 million years, the universe believed it had reached the end of history. The great empires of the galaxy had risen, perfected themselves, and stabilized existence into something orderly and predictable. Stars were catalogued. Species were ranked. Conflicts were regulated, brief, and ceremonial. The ancient races, beings of crystal, plasma, hive-mind intellects, and living metal, had outlived extinction so many times that they no longer feared it. To them, the universe was a solved equation. Humanity entered this perfected galaxy late and uninvited. Barely 2 centuries beyond their home star, humans were small, fragile, and painfully temporary. They lived short lives, broke easily, and argued constantly among themselves. Their ships were inelegant things of welded alloys and redundant systems. Where older species grew starships organically or shaped them from thought, humans built theirs with hands still scarred from gravity and atmosphere. The Galactic Conclave classified humanity accordingly. Tier 7. Auxiliary species. Useful for logistics. Adaptable. Emotionally unstable. No one expected them to matter. Then the stars began to fall. The first system vanished without warning. No supernova. No radiation burst. One moment it existed, blue sun, 12 inhabited worlds, trillions of lives, and the next it was simply gone. Not destroyed. Not altered. Removed, as if erased from reality by an uncaring hand. The ancient empires debated semantics while more systems disappeared. Some called it a natural correction. Others blamed experimental technologies or divine cycles older than memory. The conclave commissioned studies, simulations, and philosophical inquiries. They sent no fleets. There was time, they insisted. There was always time. Human analysts saw something else. Patterns. The vanishings were not random. They followed trade routes, communication hubs, population density. The thing, whatever it was hunting intelligence itself. Pruning complexity from the universe like a gardener trimming diseased branches. Human representatives brought their findings to the conclave chamber, standing beneath towering beings who had watched continents form and stars be born. This is an extinction cascade, a human scientist said, voice echoing too loudly in the vast hall. It's accelerating. If we don't respond now. You mistake correlation for urgency, replied a crystalline elder, its voice harmonizing through a dozen tones. The universe has endured far worse. Another empire spoke, ancient and calm. Your species fears endings because you are young. Time will correct this. The conclave voted. No mobilization. No evacuation. No unified defense. Humanity was advised to prepare its own territories accordingly. The next system to fall was human. Earth was spared, but the colonies weren't. A mining world in Tau Ceti vanished mid-transmission. Refugee ships arrived days later from nearby systems, their crews broken, screaming about stars that went dark and space that opened and swallowed everything. Humanity asked for aid. The conclave offered condolences. As the crisis deepened, the ancient empires began making calculations, cold, efficient, ruthless. Entire regions were abandoned to protect core worlds. Lesser species were sacrificed as buffers. Trade lanes were collapsed. Borders hardened. Humans were pushed outward. Again and again, human fleets were assigned to evacuation corridors no one else wanted to defend. Human worlds were labeled expendable to buy time for species deemed irreplaceable. Human leaders argued at first, protested, negotiated. Then they stopped asking. Across human space, something ancient and familiar awakened, not in their technology, but in their psychology. The same instinct that had driven them through ice ages, plagues, and planetary wars. The refusal to accept extinction as inevitable. Human governments dissolved old rivalries with unprecedented speed. Militaries integrated. Research secrets were shared without hesitation. Civilians volunteered in numbers that shocked even human planners. They were not stronger than the galaxy's ancient rulers. They were hungrier. As star after star vanished, humans began preparing for a future no one else dared imagine. A universe where the empires would fall, the councils would burn, and survival would not be elegant or eternal. A human admiral stood on the bridge of a hastily assembled fleet, watching distant space ripple where another system had just ceased to exist. "There's no pattern they can't see," an officer said quietly. "They just don't believe it can end." The admiral nodded. They've forgotten what endings feel like. Outside the viewport, human ships formed up, ugly, armored, scarred before their first true battle. Each one carried refugees, weapons, and something no ancient species could manufacture or remember. Defiance. "If the universe won't protect itself," the admiral said, issuing orders that would echo across history, "then humanity will." And as the stars continued to fall, the galaxy made its first, fatal mistake. It underestimated how far humans would go when there was nothing left to lose. The species that refused to die. By the time the ancient empires realized the crisis could not be debated away, humanity had already changed. There was no formal declaration. No grand speech announcing a new age. One by one, human nations simply stopped acting like separate entities. Borders lost meaning when entire star systems could vanish overnight. Ideologies faded when survival demanded unity. Flags still existed, but they flew side by side, stitched together in command halls and refugee ships, symbols of a past humanity was willing to sacrifice to preserve a future. The Human Continuity Command was born not from ambition, but necessity. It did not govern. It coordinated. Fleets, research, evacuation efforts, and last stands all flowed through a single, relentless purpose: ensure humanity did not become another silent absence in the dark. Human strategy baffled the galaxy. Where ancient races built immovable bastions around sacred stars, humans refused to anchor themselves anywhere for long. Entire cities were dismantled and loaded onto massive migration vessels. Shipyards became mobile. Research labs jumped systems weekly. Humanity learned to live in motion, carrying home not as a place, but as each other. Alien observers mistook this for retreat. They saw human fleets abandoning worlds, burning infrastructure behind them, collapsing wormholes and star lanes. Reports labeled it desperation behavior. Another short-lived species coming apart at the seams. They were wrong. Humans were denying the enemy targets. When the extinction force struck abandoned systems, it found nothing of value: no populations, no data hubs, no complexity to consume. Meanwhile, human task groups harassed its edges, probing reactions, recording anomalies, sacrificing ships not for victory, but for information. No ancient empire would have tolerated such losses. Humans accepted them without hesitation. "We can replace ships," a human commander told a stunned alien liaison after suicidal delaying action saved a refugee convoy. "We can't replace time." As human space became a shifting maze of moving populations and decoys, something unexpected happened. Other species followed. First came the minor races, those already marked expendable by the conclave. They fled into human corridors, desperate and afraid. Humanity could have turned them away. Resources were thin. Every mouth fed meant another ship risked. Instead, humans opened their holds. Refugees were given work, purpose, and protection. Engineers, farmers, artists, warriors, every species was folded into the human effort. Not as subjects. As partners. Where ancient empires ruled through hierarchy and fear, humans built loyalty through shared suffering. Whispers spread through the galaxy. The humans don't abandon their own. The humans don't abandon anyone. Battles erupted across collapsing trade routes. Human fleets rarely won cleanly. They bled. They burned. They broke, and still came back. Every engagement was designed to delay, disrupt, and learn. Humans studied the extinction force obsessively, mapping distortions in space, temporal echoes, and patterns in what it consumed and what it ignored. They learned something terrifying. The enemy was not alive. It was a process. A mechanism older than the empires themselves, designed to reset the universe when complexity reached a critical threshold. It did not hate. It did not think. It simply acted. And it had no defense against defiance. The more humans adapted, the more unpredictable they became. The extinction process hesitated, not out of confusion, but inefficiency. Humanity was no longer behaving like a civilization. It was behaving like a survival organism. Ancient worlds fell in dignified silence. Human worlds went down fighting, broadcasting warnings, data, and final messages until the last second. Every loss made the survivors smarter. Every sacrifice sharpened the species. An alien historian, watching human war logs, recorded a chilling observation. Other species fight to preserve what they are. Humans fight to preserve what they might become. Years passed. Then decades. The galaxy thinned. The conclave chambers grew emptier with each emergency session. Seats went dark. Voices fell silent mid-debate as entire civilizations vanished between meetings. Through it all, human fleets still moved. Scarred ships held together by patchwork repairs. Crews aged before their time. Children were born aboard warships and learned star charts before alphabets. Songs changed. Stories changed. Humanity itself evolved, faster, harsher, more focused. They no longer asked if they could win. Only how long they could delay the end. And in the quiet spaces between battles, as ancient empires faded into memory, a new truth spread across what remained of the galaxy, spoken softly, with awe and fear in equal measure. The universe was dying. But the humans were still standing. The fall of the last council. The final council of the galaxy convened on a world that had survived longer than any other, a planet scarred by cosmic storms, orbiting a dying orange star. Its mountains were blackened, its seas boiling, its atmosphere thin enough that many delegates required artificial breathing. The galaxy's last leaders gathered here not to celebrate or negotiate, but to witness the inevitable collapse they had long ignored. Humans were there, as always. Not as subjects. Not as allies. As a warning. They arrived in fleets that had already defied logic and expectation. Ships battered, patched with mismatched alloys, carrying crews exhausted beyond measure. They were outnumbered by council representatives tenfold, yet somehow they carried themselves with a dignity no conqueror could teach. The council chambers, carved from a single living crystal, hummed with authority. Voices from 1,000 worlds reverberated, an alien cacophony of tones, clicks, harmonics, and psychic resonance. The conclave, the last governing body of the galaxy, expected humans to bow, plead, or negotiate. Instead, they waited silently. The elder of the crystalline race spoke first, its voice weaving across dimensions. Humanity, it said, you stand before us. You are small, fragile, and unworthy of this chamber. Tell us, why have you persisted? A human admiral stepped forward, her uniform scorched, her hair streaked with ash, but her posture unwavering. We persisted, she said, voice steady, because we had no choice. Every other species relied on calculations and certainties. We relied on each other. On hope. On stubbornness. And on the refusal to accept that the universe could simply erase us without a fight. The room murmured, some in anger, some in disbelief. For the first time, the council realized the humans were not just surviving, they were winning, not by power, but by endurance. The council proposed a solution. We can save what remains of the galaxy, the elder continued, if you agree to take command. You, humans, will oversee all military, research, and preservation efforts. The humans looked at one another. They had fought without orders for decades. They had sacrificed their fleets, their colonies, and countless lives. They had no desire for power. They had only one goal, survival. Command, the admiral said, her voice calm. We take no command. We take no titles. We only ask for time. The council did not understand. Time was a commodity no species could grant. Yet it was all humans needed. A star near the council's orbit flickered and dimmed. Outside, the extinction process, once considered myth, now undeniable, crept closer. The universe itself trembled as entire systems blinked out of existence. Human fleets moved. They struck at precise points, not to destroy, but to delay. Entire squadrons were sacrificed in maneuvers that no alien commander would ever dare. Ships collided with anomalies, redirecting the extinction cascade, buying hours where only minutes had existed. Humans fell in waves, yet the enemy could not consume them all. Alien leaders watched in horror as their calculations failed. Every countermeasure, every prediction, was undone by the human capacity to adapt and endure. The extinction process had never faced a species willing to trade lives for time. To the universe, humans were a bug. To themselves, they were hope. The council debated frantically, but it was too late. The humans had already proven that resistance was possible. What remained of the galaxy owed its survival to a species the council had dismissed as insignificant. In the chaos, the admiral gave her final orders. Refugee ships were guided to distant, uncharted corridors. Research data was transmitted to colonies beyond the reach of the extinguishing wave. Fleets, though depleted, formed sacrificial lines to shield those who could survive. The council itself fell silent as the last artificial defenses collapsed. Delegates realized that the universe would endure, not through authority, not through ancient wisdom, but through the stubbornness of humanity. When the dust settled, the council chambers were empty. Star systems outside flickered dimly, but some light remained. Somewhere in the void, a small human fleet had survived, battered but unbroken. On the bridge of the admiral's flagship, the last officer stood alone. He watched the stars, black and silent, the echoes of civilizations long gone vibrating through space. In his hands, he held a folded piece of cloth, the last flag carried into battle, stained and tattered. "Raise it," he whispered. The human flag unfolded, catching the faint glow of a dying sun. It was more than cloth. It was defiance. It was memory. It was a statement that even when everything else failed, humanity would endure. And somewhere, deep in the silent corridors of space, the universe seemed to pause, acknowledging a truth it had never known. Civilizations may fall, stars may die, and empires may vanish. But humanity, stubborn, flawed, indomitable, still stood. The galaxy had lost its rulers. Its empires were gone. Its councils dissolved. Yet one truth remained, vivid against the void: the humans had survived where no one else could. And with the last council gone, the humans were free to shape the final chapters of a universe that had once laughed at their existence. The last flag flying in the universe. Time became meaningless. The galaxy, once vibrant with life, trade, and ambition, had grown silent. Stars blinked out like candles in the wind. Worlds drifted cold and barren. Alien civilizations, no matter how ancient, had vanished without warning, leaving behind only ruins, data fragments, and myths. Entire councils, fleets, and empires were erased from memory. Yet one thing remained. A tattered human flag, folded and refolded countless times, drifted in the orbit of a dead world. Its colors were faded, its fabric worn thin by centuries of cosmic storms, but it still caught the faint light of a dying sun. It was not the flag of a nation, nor of a fleet, nor of a king. It was the flag of humanity itself. A testament that someone, some species, had endured when everything else had fallen. Humans were few now. The continuity command had long dissolved. The surviving crews had scattered to the outer edges of the galaxy, aboard fleets so small they could fit inside a single ancient alien city. Many were aboard ships that were more skeletal framework than vessel, patched with remnants of countless civilizations, carrying seeds, data archives, and memories of a lost, vibrant universe. They did not weep. They did not curse. They remembered. Stories of the vanished empires were told in quiet voices. Songs of worlds burned, fleets lost, and victories measured not in territory but in survival were sung in the narrow corridors of human ships. Children, born aboard vessels drifting between dead stars, learned the history of the galaxy through tales of courage and defiance. One such child, a girl with hair the color of dying starlight, stood beside the last human admiral aboard a weathered flagship. She stared at the flag, her small hand brushing the coarse fabric. "Why do we keep it?" she asked. The admiral's eyes, lined with the weight of centuries, met hers. "Because," he said, voice calm against the hum of the ship's engines, "it is proof. Proof that we were here. That when everything else fell silent, someone refused to bow. Someone refused to vanish without a mark." Humans were no longer fighting battles. No alien adversary remained to oppose them. Yet the act of survival itself had become their duty. They catalogued, preserved, and remembered. Libraries were stored on moving stations. Artifacts of lost civilizations were rescued and studied. History was no longer a record of conquest, it was a shield against erasure. The girl looked up at the stars, black and still. "Will anyone remember us?" she asked. "They will," the admiral replied. "Maybe not now. Maybe not for 1,000,000 years. But someone, somewhere, will find this flag. They will see that the humans existed. They will learn that even when everything else failed, we stood. And that will be enough. In the distance, a faint hum reached the ship, remnants of signals bouncing across the void, remnants of civilizations that had once thought themselves eternal. Some were whispers. Some were warnings. All of them faded against the stubborn, unyielding echo of humanity. The fleet moved silently, weaving among collapsed systems and drifting planets. They planted flags on barren worlds, not claiming them, but leaving signs of life, defiance, and remembrance. A simple statement in a universe that had almost forgotten how to hope: we were here. We endured. Generations passed aboard these ships. The girl grew, became a leader, and then an elder herself. She watched as human colonies became fewer, smaller, but no less determined to carry the memory of the species forward. Their numbers were irrelevant. Their spirit was eternal. On the dead world where the last flag fluttered, space travelers from distant galaxies eventually arrived. They discovered ruins, data archives, and remnants of civilizations, but the human flag caught their attention first. Worn and frayed, it spoke of a species that refused to vanish quietly, that had survived when all others had failed. In quiet reverence, they translated the words stitched into the corner of the flag. We were here. We endured. It became a symbol. Not of conquest. Not of domination. But of persistence, courage, and the power of a species that refused to surrender to inevitability. Aliens, long after humans were gone, would speak of them with awe. Stories would be told in distant systems, songs sung in starports, and myths carved into the surviving stones of worlds. And in that silent galaxy, where stars blinked dimly against the void and empires existed only in memory, the humans had left a mark that could never be erased. For the last flag flying in the universe was human. And as long as it flew, the story of defiance, of hope, and of survival endured, long after the last council had fallen, long after the last empire had vanished, and long after the last star had died. Humanity had gone, but its spirit had become immortal. Even in a universe that had forgotten everything else, the flag remained. A testament. A warning. And above all, a declaration. We were here. And nothing, not time, not death, not the void itself, could take that away.